Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Jason Oates, the founder of the non-surgical penis augmentation procedure that we call Caliber. People call me the Dick Doctor, and I'll be talking all things penis, including size, shape, and function. Hi everybody, Dr. Oates here with the Penis Podcast, and today it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce Dr. Casavantes. And if you're a member from the Fellow Boards Forum, you'll definitely know the name Dr. C. Well, here is Dr. C, and he's certainly one of the real pioneers in Phalloplasty. Hello, Dr. C. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Oates. Hi, Jason. How are you? Good to hear you. Good to see you. I'm doing good in this side of the world.
You're a dermatologist. So a dermatologist is a skin specialist. So I finished medical school, went on and did proper training in skin. So skin cancers and rashes and all kinds of weird and wonderful conditions of the skin. And you've been a practicing dermatologist, did you say 30 years now?
30-something. 30, I think it's 32 or something like that.
I was going to say, Does anybody ever say that you look like Dwayne Johnson? You know, The Rock?
No.
No, nobody's ever said.
Yeah. You know what? Yes, but before I aged so much and I was a little heavier and stuff. Yeah.
Well, when I'm looking at your photo on the Avanti Derma website, I think, oh, they got The Rock in for the photograph there.
That's funny.
So,
yeah.
So has your dermatology practice always been in Tijuana?
Yes. I got out of school in Mexico City, but then I came to Tijuana. I have, like everybody, most people in the area, I had dual citizenship, U.S. and Mexican. So I live in the U.S. in San Diego and work in Tijuana. Not a perfect formula because we need to cross the busiest border in the world every day, almost. Yeah.
My parents took me to San Diego. It would have been 35 years ago. And at that time, in all our travels, we thought San Diego was the most like Perth, which is where I live, in Australia, of any city that we saw. Sort of a West Coast city, smaller sort of city. I guess in 35 years, both cities have grown a lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Okay. So you're a busy dermatologist. You've got a full dermatology practice, but then at some stage you moved into phalloplasty. How did that happen?
Yeah, it was kind of an accident. When in 2002, I got a young patient that looked prematurely old. So I did a little filler in his cheeks, a little HA, a little bit of HA, and his response was incredible. He left the office jumping on joy. And I was like, what did I do? So he sent another one, and that other one sent more. And all of a sudden, I have an inundated practice. But the thing was that everybody looked the same. Everybody was young, and everybody had premature aging. Around that time, I got in my hands an article from Dr. Carr from Australia. I don't know if he's in Sydney or in Perth, I don't know, where he described the lipoatrophy, HIV-related lipoatrophy. So at that moment, I said, "Oh my God, I've been working with this, and I didn't even know that I was working on this, right?" But HA was very temporary for these guys. So I started researching, and I found in Brazil, the PMMA, because these guys needed a more permanent solution than HA. So I started working on that. That's 2002, 2007. I had an office. I just did facial reconstruction. So 2007, this guy told me, "Can you do my penis?" And I was like, "Well, I learned the technique in Brazil, but you will be number one." He says, I don't care. If you can work on faces, you probably can work on penises, right? So I cannot tell you how fearful I was, but I did it. And
I know
turned out
exactly
very
how
well.
fearful you were.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So I did it, and I was like, I looked at the patient for 30 minutes to see if I didn't create any necrosis or something. And no, everything worked really well. So same thing, same as with the faces. All of a sudden, another patient, and then 2, and then 4, and then the office was full with them. And it all started when the antiretrovirals were being modified, so patients didn't have any lipoatrophy anymore. So I stepped away from facial reconstruction and started penile enhancement. This is 2007, and it's just been growing and growing.
I sort of, once the word gets out, yeah, people keep on. So you started off really in penises with PMMA. So can you explain to the listeners what is PMMA?
Yes, the way it is, we have two big groups of fillers, right? The gels, hyaluronic acid, and the microsphere-based soft tissue fillers. The microsphere-based soft tissue fillers are basically 2 at this moment, which is ELANS, polycaprolactone microspheres, and PMMA, which is polymethyl methacrylate microspheres. The only difference between the 2 products is that ELANS decays and gets reabsorbed, and PMMA doesn't. So PMMA has had an evolution, a very slow evolution. I think most practitioners, most doctors are very worried about permanent body alterations, and we should definitely, yeah, because the problem with permanent fillers like PMMA is that the only solution if something goes wrong is surgical. So a body alteration that can end up with scars and deformity, right? So, but I learned that way. I was trained for the face. I was trained in Brazil by Marcio Serra. Brazil at the time had a government program that will treat the facial hypertrophy patients for free. It was government paid. So they had this official program, and Marcio Serra was the head of that program. So I got trained with plenty of patients in Brazil. So I got a lot of confidence. I liked the product, and I started doing that.
Yes, in Australia, we've never had the brand of PMMA that you use. We went through a number of different particulate fillers. There was Derma, which was sort of chopped up solid silicone in, I'm not sure what was in, but that was a problem. I can't remember the other, but there have been various other permanent, and of course there was silicone, which has been around for decades, and has had some useful uses, but has been used off license in many places in the face. And I still see patients coming down from Southeast. Well, I used to see patients coming down from Southeast Asia. Who've had it injected in their nose, but injected in the breasts and various other places. And silicone can look fantastic to start with. And maybe for some people it stays fantastic and we never see them. But when it goes bad, then it's a problem, and then it's a hard problem to fix.
A real problem. Oh yeah, yeah. So, you know, that product that you mentioned, there was chop silicone. That was very problematic. And Gottfried Lemperle from Germany, he has done the most extensive research work on PMMA, and he discovered and proved through clinical trials that the microspheres or microparticles in the fillers must be soft and rounded and standard in size. And that product had chunks of silicone all over the place that created granulomas big time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
so the bioengineering.
Well, I was going to say that sort of is the amazing thing, how the PMMA especially has changed and developed, and they've come to understand the science of it, so that it now does seem to be a safe product. I can remember a decade or so ago, cosmetic groups sort of around the world, Europe, were saying, no to particulate fillers. They were just too big a problem.
Right.
And the problem was more so how the fillers were made with that technology at that time. And it seems like the technology has improved, and you're sort of the proof that you can use it long term and have lots of happy patients.
Correct.
But we don't have it. We don't have it here in Australia.
You don't have Belafil either. The from Suneva that is manufactured in San Diego. You don't have that.
We don't have that either.
Okay.
No, that's
okay.
And this shows, yeah, I don't even have the option of looking at. But if I was going to use those products, I'd want to come to you and get you to show me how you do it. Because I started using hyaluronic acid, and the reason I wanted to use hyaluronic acid was that if I needed to get rid of it, at least I could. Because I hadn't had any training in the penis, and my original training was ear, nose, and throat surgery. And so I'm very comfortable in the face, but my practice has always been cosmetic. And I started in 1999, and the fillers were in Australia just starting at that time. Botox, collagen was all we had, and Hyaluronic. And so I've done a lot of that in the face. But yeah, I had a patient who came to me and said, well, you can do all of this injecting for women. Why can't you do injecting for me? I said, well, what do you want? Cheeks? No, I want you to make my penis bigger. I don't know. With the wonders of internet and stuff, I was finding that the Koreans, of course, had been publishing some papers.
Right.
And they have their email addresses on the paper, so I write to them, expecting and asking, can I come to Korea and learn how to inject hyaluronic? Never heard from them, and so eventually, I decided, okay, this is something I think people have really got to want to do. And so I was just asking friends. And so I was really nervous when I was doing my first case, saying, I've never done this before. I've got no idea how it's going to turn out. I can dissolve it if I have to. So, fortunately, that sort of it worked out okay. So, so you've been using PMMA, and in fact, was there a time when PMMA was the only product that you offered at all?
Absolutely, yeah. I used PMMA from 2007 for the penis, from 2007 to probably 2015. And the thing is that I got kind of like locked up in that. I was stamped with PMMA. My Avanti Derma was equal PMMA. So I tried to use HA because of all the convenience things of HA, but it never took off. It wasn't until I got my hands on Elance, that was 2015 probably, and it took off a little bit, but nothing major. And so I stopped offering it, and then all of a sudden, patients started knowing about it. I mean, in the US, because it was available there for a little while, and then they became more aware of the existence of Elance. So from 2017, I think the Elance fraction of my practice has grown from probably 5-10% to probably 50% now. So we do basically one PMMA patient, one Elance patient, and occasionally an HA.
Okay. Well, in that case, with your experience, what difference do you find in using the two products?
Clinically, nothing. It's exactly the same. The only thing probably is, a lance is more, I will say, cosmopolitan, comes in a beautiful packaging, comes with a beautiful syringe that is easy to use. And PMMA is a little more, how do I say, budget. It comes in a generic package. I don't have anything at this moment, and I'm not in the office. But comes in it's a regular syringe, and so it's easier to use a lance than PMMA. But the consistency of the product, both are 30%. We have in PMMA, we have the alternative of 10%, but the consistency is the same. The vehicle is the same, carboxymethyl cellulose, everything is the same. And the clinical results are exactly the same, except that that one is long-term, right?
Yeah. Well, do you see patients' results with the lance dissolving and disappearing?
2017, I think I started using it with more and more frequency. And I've been using in 99% of the patients, the version L of lance, which is 3 years. But what I've seen is that it lasts way more than 3 years. I haven't seen any patient to this day that got rid of the whole thing. So of course, the penis is an extremity of the body. The metabolism is lower there, and is not exposed to elements and stuff. So I'm not afraid. I think that it's going to last way more than those 3 years.
Yeah, that's definitely been our experience as well. In fact, I've never seen it go away. My first patient, who I haven't seen for a long time, but it's probably almost 6 years now. But I haven't heard of any patients who have had it go away. And I had a patient actually fly out from the USA, and he must be almost 5 years now, maybe in January or February of 22, he'll be 5 years. And he was on fallow boards. The last time I heard, it was about 4.5 years. And he said he couldn't see any difference with it in that time. So I have read I've read some studies where they were looking, I think it was the 1 year version of a lance. And then they were looking at the histology of it at 2 years. And the product was obviously still there. It was starting to break down, but it looked like the majority of the actual product was there. And for listeners, and I hope we don't get too caught up in sort of the things that we're interested in, and we'll try and make sure the listeners are interested too. Because I'm just fascinated to be able to meet you and talk to you. The most exciting things I've done with the podcast, in fact, probably the most exciting. And I've lost my track now. So yeah, the Alance was still there at 2 years, but it's not the Alance that's doing the filling. It's the collagen that it stimulates.
The collagen, exactly.
And that collagen supposedly has what we call a half-life of 15 years. And so that means in 15 years, half of it will break down, and that perhaps will still have half of it, and another 15 years, and half of it will break down. So that's a really long time. But we don't know whether that collagen will disappear quicker or last longer. It is a big experiment. And that's something I try and sort of explain to patients, that phalloplasty is actually considered an experimental process, even though you've been doing it for decades. I don't know, how many thousands of patients would you think that you've done in that time?
Well, I've been a little lazy, but in 2016, I published 750 patients, but in reality, I took those 750 patients because they were the only ones that had all the records and all the good data, right? But I I took 750 out of probably 3,000, and that's 2016. So I'm around easy over 5,000 patients, and I don't know how many procedures, but I haven't been doing statistics lately. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, and I'm been trying to do studies, and we've been working with a university here and the psychology department.
Right.
We followed patients up for a few years now, but it's now down to me to sort of collate all the data, and the study goes along great until it becomes my responsibility to do something, and then it always grinds to a halt. And really,
yeah, it happens.
And yeah, we should definitely try and make some kind of commitment to publish more, so that it does become better known, and that it becomes an accepted thing that this treatment is a real treatment done by real doctors using medical products.
Exactly. Yep.
Of course, the problem is the more you publish and the more you teach other people to do it, you end up just training your competitor, who ends up setting up down the road from you. So
right.
It's always that little background thing in your mind. Because I know I've been in Australia, the person sort of pushing this idea of injectable phalloplasty, but then clinics spring up all around you, and with great social media sort of advertising and websites and stuff, and all of a sudden everybody's an expert. But that's okay. I guess that is what's going to advance this area.
Yeah, it's definitely gentrifying. I see it, all over the place. I remember the days when I was probably by myself, because for some reason the Brazilians, I have a lot of friends there, and actually I just had a visit from a young guy. He's in his 30s, and they just started a practice in dermatology, cosmetic medicine, and everything. Is a male dedicated practice, and but for some reason they never were at the level that they were when they were doing facial reconstruction. When they were doing facial reconstruction, there was a shuttle service from the US, an airplane shuttle service that will take loads of patients to Rio de Janeiro to get fixed. And the phalloplasty has not been that prevalent there, but I think it will be. And what I have noticed, you probably have too, is that now the patients have the capacity to go to the corner in their city to the nearest plastic surgeon and get the phalloplasty done. But I have said many times, I wouldn't be to like the first or the 10th or the 20th first patient of a guy doing phalloplasty.
No,
yeah.
No, it's I guess everybody needs to start somewhere, but you don't want to be the person that they're starting on.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's always the advantage for those sort of who are the established practitioners like us, who
right.
it's now very easy for us to say, "Oh, only go to see somebody who's done hundreds, 1,000 cases," like
exactly
like me and you. It is
right,
but it's definitely coming, because there was a time when there was no woman who had a breast augmentation, and then
exactly
there was one, and then it just took off. And of course, for women, it's much more visible, and I think it really took off in Las Vegas with showgirls, and their breast augmentations made their money back very quickly there.
right.
Whereas most of our guys are relatively shy about it. I assume it's perhaps the same in America, that they're not necessarily all telling all their friends that they've had it.
Right.
Although, do you find that's changing?
The future of I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you think that more guys are talking about it, about what they've had done to their penis, compared to 5 or 10 years ago?
Yes, definitely. I remember in the beginning, one day I got a patient from New York, and he was laughing. We were laughing because he was telling me that he went to a party in New York, and my practice came into the conversation, and he was already my patient. So he's sitting there with the guys, and they're talking about this guy in Tijuana augmenting penises. And they go like, have you heard anything about it? And he said, mm-mm. So this is 10 years ago or something. So now, and of course, it all depends on the patient. Some patients have no problem, even crossing the border. You know, my patients come to me and they need to cross back into the US through the San Isidro border. And sometimes they ask them, what were they doing in Mexico? And some don't have any problems stating, I went for a penis enlargement. It's like, and of course, is very well known now that it exists, even though many patients don't have an idea how it works. Like, they started me on TikTok one day. It was a Wednesday. By Saturday, I had 10,000 followers. But it was like they shut off my website. But everything happened because they thought that I had a magical pill or a magical little something. They didn't realize that it was a medical procedure that involved anesthesia and a high payment and stuff like that. So it was like a big curve of followers, and then they disappeared. But it is gentrifying, definitely.
Yes, we've found, like, when we were starting this, advertising on Facebook was the thing to do for cosmetic medicine and surgery. But we couldn't advertise anything to do with penises. That was not allowed.
Correct. Exactly.
They're allowed to market breast augmentation, but not market penis augmentation. I thought that's very sexist. And then AdWords for us was the big thing. So have an AdWords campaign, which is terrible because it costs you a fortune. But the vast majority of guys who find me are guys who are Googling, make my penis bigger. How do I make my penis bigger? And then
right.
You come up. And so it used to be having AdWords for that was good. But then recently, Google sort of cut out AdWords for at least here in Australia, for penis augmentation. So we couldn't use AdWords either. So yeah, it's really been a lot of guys Google searching. But I keep on. Do you find that the same for you? Is that how the majority of guys find you?
Actually, the awareness in Australia is huge. I can tell you something. Australia was my third country until you came on board.
Sorry.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, but yeah, the awareness in Australia was amazing. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, that's perhaps why I've seen some of your work, and I've seen various work with PMMA. And so I had a guy come in, and I thought he wanted to discuss having an enlargement. He said, "Oh no, I just want to show you what Dr. C did for me." I thought, "Okay, great." He pulled it out, and yeah, I was thinking, well, it sort of looks and feels like a normal penis. It's just very fat. And of course, I've had other people come and show me PMMA that's been done in Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, various places, and it's full of lumps and bumps, and then asking me to fix it, and I don't want to chop it up,
Right.
and yeah, and I don't really want to inject things around it either, because I'm worried that I'm going to introduce an infection. Okay, it's all lumpy and bumpy, but it's not infected and a disaster. So what do I do when somebody comes in with lumps and bumps from PMMA that's been done anywhere else but you?
is dramatic. I have done with a surgeon. I'm not a surgeon, but I have assisted a surgeon in the removal in probably 3 patients, and it's extremely aggressive. The post-care, the post-surgery couple of days are horrible for the patient, and the turnout is not good. Yeah. So it's one of the things that I tell to my patients, to my PMMA. We have a criteria, a selection criteria. We don't take young patients. We need them to grow up. We need them to be really sure that they want a permanent modification. And even though I've been always, this from the beginning, stressing that we don't do penile enlargement, we do penile enhancement. We just want to make it beefier, less retractive, and heavier. But we don't want to put, the moment they come to me and they want 1 inch or 1.5 or 2 inches, I go like, no, calm down. 1/2 inch is perfect. It's going to be a substantial change, and you're going to be in way safer in the end, right? I had a patient in the beginning. I did 3 or 4 sessions, and then I refused to keep going. And one day I realized that he had been seeing this urologist, and he got, that I know, more like a dozen more sessions. So the guy did probably 20 sessions. So I don't know. And one day he came devastated because he divorced and he couldn't find anybody that will accept having anything with him because of the size of that thing. So he's one of the patients that we took it off. And interestingly enough, we took it off. The recuperation was horrible, poor guy. Then he recovered. And a few months later, he comes back and he wants more. And we're like, oh. I think I need to refer you to somebody else. Yeah.
I knew you were going to be saying that as soon as you said you had taken it out. He's going to come back, isn't he? Yeah, had to be. Right. Okay, so how many mils are you using per session? What's a routine volume that you'll put in one session?
I feel comfortable in anything in between, well, a minimum 5, 6, whatever, up to a 20 cc's. Once I start going over 20, I start feeling a little, not a little, very uncomfortable. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to tell the patient, listen, I do not sell PMMA. I'm giving you a medical procedure, right? So it's not about, because sometimes they tell me, I can pay more. It's not about that, right? Mm-hmm. And so 20 will be max, and depending on, of course, on the size of the patients, right? Mm-hmm. But I rather do different procedures, because one thing that I definitely have seen is you start forcing product into the penis, and you're creating lumps and bumps and cysts and so many complications.
Yeah. Well, I certainly find that I get more lumps and bumps with a lance than I do with a hyaluronic acid patients. I have another doctor who was working here with me in Perth, but he moved to Melbourne, and then WA locked the borders and he couldn't come back. So he lives in Melbourne now. Because of what we've done. But yeah, he loves a lance, and he would, 90% of patients, 95% use it, where when he first started with me, I was 95% hyaluronic acid. But yeah, sometimes I'll do a lance, and at the end of the procedure, I'm so happy, and I think it is perfectly smooth, even, it's distributed perfectly around the penis into the base, and then I'll see them at some time, 2 months later, and there's an area where it's thicker and lumpier. Why would I be getting that? What's gone wrong? What have I done wrong? What is patient done wrong? Why?
But probably my worst nightmare with the lance is a guy that has not micro penis, but a very small penis, that is buried and is very retractive. And I did them, and I regret, because definitely retraction is our worst enemy. Absolutely. And there's no way that I can keep that penis pulled with anything. It disappears into the body.
Yeah.
And of course, his results are not good at all. Patients that hang well and they have no retraction and a good size are way easier, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my number one reason for refusing to do an augmentation is retraction and being overweight. So some of these guys like grab their tummy and I'm lifting it up and saying,
right,
your penis is fantastic. Your stomach is the problem. Lose 30 kilos, come back and see me. I said, but if you lose 30 kilos, you won't need to come and see me, because one, your penis will be much bigger because it won't be covered with that. Two, you'll look fantastic. Imagine how much better you're going to look. Women will flock to you compared to, when you're 30 kilos overweight. You will feel fantastic. Your sexual stamina will go through the roof. There's just no point in having a fatter penis if you've got a huge fat stomach. You've just got to get those.
Right.
But
absolutely.
If you wait for people to lose 30 kilos, then you never get to do anything. So sometimes we end up having to do liposuction on some of them. And liposuction, especially do you do any liposuction at all yourself?
I do not, no.
So with a cosmetic practice, I do a bit of I went actually to the US, and when I was in Indianapolis, a surgeon there said, learn how to do liposuction and you'll never starve. I thought, probably.
All right.
But yeah, sometimes when you do that suprapubic liposuction, so immediately above the penis, you can get some very impressive swelling, and they can end up with their scrotum sort of looking like a softball or a small basketball or something. It starts getting quite swollen, and the penis can sort of all swell up. So that can be an interesting experience for them. But yes, I've also tried to use filler for a guy with a lot of retraction. Basically, he had like a very impressive foreskin, and that was it. It was just skin hanging out. We tried it.
That was it.
And fortunately, I used hyaluronic acid, but then I just created an impressive donut around where the penis should be. So as you say, you can't beat retraction, really severe retraction with filler. But for most guys who get a little bit of retraction, that weight of the product, and perhaps it's just that it's hard for it to retract against that physical resistance, most guys say that it makes a difference, don't they?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I see on your website, maybe an earlier version of your website, that you're using tadalafil, Cialis for minimizing retraction, especially after having a procedure?
Correct. In some patients, we use tamsulosin regularly to relax the penis, and sometimes we add the tadalafil.
Okay, so what was the first one you used?
Oh my God, I got lost. It's let me see, I have it here. It came automatically, but it went away. Is tamsulosin? Is the Flomax?
Oh, okay, yeah, yes. So we started off using those sort of that can either be used as blood pressure medications or for prostate to get a better flow. What in the medical terms we sort of the alpha-1 blockers. But yeah, that was an interesting, and I can't remember quite how I came across that a few years ago, but it was a strange thing that there was this medication that had this reputation of making your penis bigger, and it was just increasing that blood flow into the penis.
Right.
Just yesterday, I was speaking to a young guy who last year, when I did his original procedure, might have been 2 years ago now, did his original procedure. I gave him that medication, and he said, oh yeah, he felt a little bit lightheaded a couple of times, especially if he stood up quickly. He had what we call postural hypertension. Right. So this time we were giving him Cialis instead. What I find with a lot of guys with Cialis is that when you start them on it and they get that, their penis sort of hanging out to the full sort of size, the full length, plus maybe they get some increased function as well, easier to get an erection, that sort of, then they don't want to stop it. Do you find that?
Right.
Can I get another script for that? And
yeah, some of my patients. Yeah. Yes, some of my patients, because in Mexico, those medications, Viagra, Cialis, and all those are OTCs. So they come here and they get truckloads of them, and they go back.
Yeah. So here it's a script, and you can sort of only get a month by month sort of script, which is a bit of a nuisance. And it was only when I was speaking to a friend and he was telling me he'd taken the tablet every day for 3 or 4 years. I thought, can you do that? He said, yeah, you can do that. Well, okay, so that's when we started sort of using it. And we've certainly found that it helps. That, as you say, retraction is probably our number one enemy. I say being overweight is our second enemy, because if it's just hanging over and hiding the penis, you just can't do anything with it. I tell people it's definitely not a treatment for micro penis. And about a month ago, I had a guy come in. He was really psychologically upset about his micro penis, and I'd never actually had a person come in and say, I've got micro penis. And I'm saying, so micro penis, the erection is less than 7.5 centimeters. Exactly. Yes, my erection barely 7. And I thought, oh, okay, gee, that's a little bit unfortunate. Okay, show me. And so he unzips, pulls this gigantic penis out. And I said, did you mean 7 inches? He says, yes. So that is not a micro. 7 centimeters, 7 inches, different things. So I had to.
That is completely different.
Completely different.
Wow.
So actually, something that we've finally instituted only in the last few months is some of these penile dysmorphic questionnaires. And there's a series of questions. So we've only just, well, in fact, only really in the last month, I think, that girls have finally got it that every single patient has to answer one of these. And I think in the future, we'll be using that for some sort of research. But yes, it's sort of interesting how much these guys are. So it's got a scale going from left to right, and on the right-hand side is it's extreme, 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 extreme. How many ticks there are and how extreme they feel that their penis size worries them. And then when you see them, they've got a normal average size penis. And I guess you probably see the same. It's the guys that you see have normal average penises for the most part.
Right. We're talking about the small penis syndrome, right? Other than, I mean, the opposite side of the coin, like retraction is our worst enemy, I think the small penis syndrome is our best ally. Because the patient to begin with, this is not for you, but for our audience, a person with small penis syndrome has a normal size penis, but they think that it's small. So they can go to shrink, they can go to whatever treatments, and they're going to continue to see that penis as a small penis. They come to us and they get a substantial increase that is palpable, visible, and everything. That's the cure for those guys. And that's the number one indication for us.
It is. So as I started writing papers with a psychologist, and she does a lot of work in sexual health. And she actually met her because she was writing papers on labiaplasty for women, and was contacting me because I do that surgery here in Perth. And then I asked her, would she be interested in writing about phalloplasty, because there's really not that much, especially on the psychology side of it. So she started writing papers for us. And it's one of these things that it's very difficult for her as a psychologist to say, yes, just have the procedure because that's going to fix you. Because on the psychology side, you've got to say, you've got to go and have psychology and talk through it and work out your problems. You don't have a procedure. She just can't. If she says that, she'll never be allowed back to a meeting. She'll be kicked out of her college. So it's sort of interesting. So the psychologists that we're working with said the same sort of thing to me. They said, all these guys have normal sized penises. Why do they want to have abnormally large penises? And I'm saying, because it's a bigger penis. Like, it's like,
right, that's it.
That's it. Like, I don't think I understand the question. Like, and the funny thing is, it was a male as well saying this to me. I'm saying, wouldn't you want a bigger penis? It's like, it is ingrained into men's psychology, and in fact, it's sort of the ultimate insult. In fact, that's another reason why I see men, and I'm sure you must have seen hundreds of men like who come in and say, I broke up with my girlfriend or wife, and she said, I've got a small penis. Yeah.
Right. That's the number one source.
That
right?
is. And,
yeah.
And when a guy has been told that, I think they never forget it. And not even like for a single day. Early on in my career doing rhinoplasty, I had a patient who I did a rhinoplasty on, and she was in her 50s, and somebody had made a comment in her high school yearbook about the size of her nose. And so when I took the splint off her nose, she was like in tears, saying, oh, well, no more. And she said every single day that she looked in the mirror, she thought of this comment. And I think it's the same for guys. Somebody says something to them like that, and then they never forget it. And
they will never forget. Yep.
And
yep.
You know, I measure their penis, and Professor Veal from King's College in London has told us that the median, the average sort of circumference of a penis is 9.3 centimeters. So I tell everybody it's 9.5. And so you measure them and you say, look, you're 10.5 centimeters around, you're a centimeter bigger than average. You know, you don't have to worry about it. You're fine. But I've never talked a guy out of it by saying, look, really, you don't need it. You're normal, you're average, you're a bit over average. But no guy ever says, okay, oh, I'm average. That's great.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched this. It's a little documentary that is called "Big Like Me." The author came to me. I did his growth enhancement, and he narrates the whole process of his quest for a bigger penis. So he came to me, and he starts his documentary stating that the wife told him, you don't have any problem, you're normal. And he says, I hate that word. I don't want to be normal. I want to be big. I don't want to be normal. I don't want to be average. I want to be big. It's the way it is.
Yeah. Yes. So, of course, most guys are average. That's sort of what average sort of is indicating, and normal. The statistic that I really like is that 50% of guys are below average. That's mathematically what average means. It's in the middle. So 50% of guys are smaller than average.
On one side.
So
right.
50% of guys want to have a bigger penis because they're smaller than average. But the other thing that we find is you have guys who've got big penises come in, and I ask them and say, well, you've got a big penis. You know, why do you want to make it bigger? And they say, well, big is good, and bigger must be better.
Yeah, thinking for themselves, right? Because women don't agree with that.
No. And then, yeah, so yeah, eventually you get them up to that sort of size, and you're saying, well, if we make it any bigger, what are you going to do with it? Because nobody's going to want to have sex with that.
Right.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting sort of thing. And maybe some guys don't want it for sex.
Right. Yeah. I can tell you my extreme case in that arena. I got up. We do remote consultations. I'm positive that you do too, because people cannot come just for a consultation, right? So I got a picture of this guy that wanted a bigger penis, but he sent a set of pictures in relaxation, but he sent also one in erection. Interesting enough, he had 12 quarter 25-cent coins, US dollars, and it was 12 of them. So I was like, what's the size of one of those coins? So I measured one is 1 inch. So his penis was 12 inches, and he wanted it bigger. I don't know what for, but he was requesting. I said, you don't need it. I'm not messing with this.
Yeah, it's and yeah. In fact, I explain to guys, like, when you've got something that's really good, it's possible to go backwards and make it worse. And especially when you're using one of these really long-acting fillers, where if you get a lump or a bump, they're just not easy to get rid of. And it depends on how willing you are to accept that. But it's the same with having a really pretty girl come in who just wants like a millimeter off her nose because she's a model, and she thinks it's going to improve her modeling career. And you think, but if you just have one tiny irregularity on that nose, and you make her a step backwards rather than forwards, she's never going to not see it. She's going to be so unhappy. And penis isn't quite so out there, I guess, but guys can really get fixated on even small things on their penis. I've had guys with the tiniest little lump who are almost having a breakdown over it.
Oh yes, definitely. And it's one of our criteria selection. People that patients that or prospective patients that won't qualify is those that we call it. The situation is called phallocentrism, right? Their life, their well-being, their future, their social skills, everything relays on the penis. And the other thing is the dysmorphophobia, right? That they won't tolerate an irregularity, and they are obsessively worried about future complications. And yeah, definitely those patients shouldn't be taken. Sometimes they go through the filter and we get them, and then we have a nightmare, because it's like, I don't even see that. No, but if I bend it this way, and how often do you bend it that way to see the little lump, right? But yeah, it happens. Yes,
yeah. It's possible to miss them occasionally, isn't it? Which is a shame. It's in fact, sometimes if you have a problem, it's better and easier to have an obvious problem that you can see, I can see. So you can say, at least we've got something, okay, we know what we're trying to fix. But when you've got a problem that you really can't see, then you've got nothing to fix. That's much more difficult problem. So yeah, patient selection is a really important thing. And it's a little bit difficult to explaining to a guy, look, I don't want to do this because I think you're not a good candidate. I don't think you're going to, at least with this, we can say, look, I think you've got a high risk of being worried about a small problem that then I can't fix. And I don't want you, for the rest of your life being worried about something that I've done to you. And that sort of
right is when HA comes so handy, right?
That is when, and I've had 2 or 3 cases where we've just dissolved the whole lot, got rid of it, and it's an expensive exercise for me. So I give all their money back. But yeah, at least there's a way out there. So that's
right.
It's so you've got these amazing treatments for the shaft, and you can give them a permanent, thicker, meatier, girthy shaft. What about the head then? What can you do for the head?
Yeah, you mentioned South Korea. I did go to South Korea. I contacted one of the doctors, and he had, I believe, 2 or 3 different products. The name of that product is, or was, I don't know if it's still in the market, Lippen, Lippen, right? And it was dextran microspheres, or it was PMMA. So he had the absorbable one and the other one. He was doing the glands in a matter of 5 minutes, probably 3. And he was putting 3, 4, and 5 cc's of the Lippen. And I saw amazing results in a matter of minutes, but I never saw a patient after. Even though we were in contact before, I told him I would like to see a patient that you have done before. I want to see him months later or something. I never saw one of them. But then I got a couple, 2 patients that did it, and they got necrotic, and they got scars and kind of like craters. Is weird how the glands heals, right?
Really
Kind of like little, exactly. So I was like, I don't like this. So I decided that I will use only HA in low dose for the glands, and I tell the patients, listen, this might not be worth it for you, because it's going to be a light increase, and it's all I can do. So I'm very conservative with glands. With the glands, I don't promote it, and I kind of like don't even like it. It's not that I don't like it. I feel a little bit weird to offer the patients and collect the money and everything for a very light increase.
Yeah. So years ago, when I was starting, I was doing some HA into the body, well, into the depth of the glands, and you could get a really nice immediate result. And you could put it around the edge of the glands that we call the corona, and that would flare the head out nicely, and it looked great. And the immediate result looked huge, had a great shape. And then a few months later, it was all gone. And it appears that by injecting into the body or into the depth of the glands, the head, that's, as we know, erectile tissue, and it's got a blood flow, and maybe it's when they're erect, and it just washes the hyaluronic acid away, so it disappears.
That's, yep, exactly.
So that's and so, and then we were starting, well, maybe we just got to put more in the initial sort of thing. So we're putting 3, 4, 5 mils in a go, but they're all still washed away. So that wasn't so great. But then, of course, again, the Koreans, Dr. Moon and co, had that paper where they were treating premature ejaculation, and they're injecting more superficially, and they were getting it 90% of it lasting 18 months or so, and still able to measure that augmentation. And so I do that occasionally, and the skin of the head of the penis is crinkly because it's made able to expand with an erection. And I find you're injecting the superficially, and it's very easy to get lumps and bumps and what we call a Tyndall effect, where it looks a bit bluish because it's this clear gel straight under the skin.
Correct.
And you can keep on injecting more and more and fill in the valleys, the hollows between the lumps. And in that case, I find, yes, it lasts a long time. It flares, and it can be useful. I haven't sort of cured premature ejaculation, I don't think, for any of the guys that I've done it on.
Right.
But it's trying to get that balance of whether the look with some of the lumps and bumps is worth it for the size increase that they get. And then I saw the Spanish experience using Aquamid with this polyacrylamide gel. Now, Aquamid's been available in Australia for 20 years. And I can remember when it first came out, and it was causing all kinds of problems, mainly with infection, because people just weren't treating it with enough respect. And then after I saw a few people with infection, I thought, well, I'm never going to use these permanent fillers. You know, permanent fillers can give you permanent complications. And so I just totally stopped. But I've got a couple of colleagues on the East Coast who have been using it regularly for 20 years, and they can't understand why we're not all using it, and you get permanent results. But I still wasn't convinced that I wanted to use it. And you know, I have guys asking me, why can't I do a permanent procedure? And I said, well, I actually try and send them to you when they want a permanent procedure. There's only one man in the world I know who can do it and can get a great result. So, and of course, you know, for 2 years, that hasn't been able to happen. But I wasn't confident to use Aquamid in the shaft of the penis, because if I got a lump or a bump, then the only way of getting it out is to stab it and squeeze the product out. Squeeze it, yeah. And then I'd always be worried, if I'm stabbing through the skin to squeeze it out, am I then going to introduce an infection and start a series of problems? And the last thing we want is to be causing problems. But the Spanish group had been using it in the glands for 3 years. And they were using it after they'd used the inflatable pumps into the shaft for erectile dysfunction, permanent erectile dysfunction. But that pumps up the shaft and gives them an erection, but the head, the glands, are still soft and small. And so they wanted something to fill the glands up and get a bit of substance to it for being able to have sex. And only using relatively small volumes, say 3 mils at a session, but they hadn't had any problems over that 3-year period. And I sort of mentioned it on, and you sort of commented on how there have been all these other problems with these polyacrylamide gels, the bioalchemid. And so I went back and I tried to find everything that I could find on it. And certainly some of the other polyacrylamide gels have got a lot of documented complications, but much less for Aquamid itself. There are certainly infections caused by it, and I think that's just done by not being sterile when you're injecting. But there didn't seem to be these long-term complications. And it still worries me that phalloplasty, penis augmentation, experimental procedure for every urological society in the world, somewhat controversial. And it's the sort of thing that in Australia you could get hauled up in front of the medical board and saying, explain what you're doing. Why are you doing this strange thing that nobody else does?
Right. Yeah.
But if it was a hyaluronic acid, and you say, well, I can dissolve it all away, right now, it'll be gone, 5 minutes, dissolve it away. But with a permanent filler, that's another matter. The more and more I read, the more comfortable I've got. So I have started offering it in the last 2 to 3 months, and I've done maybe 10 patients now. And we're very, very clear that this is an experimental treatment. And in fact, we're going to be writing up a study between us, the Spanish, and maybe a couple of other groups around the world. Maybe this will be an answer. I hope we're not sort of doing this in a year's time and discussing, well, what a failure that was.
I hope not.
Wouldn't be good. But hopefully that's going to be something. So we'll wait and see.
You know, in my experience with those fillers, Aquamid, it was available, but I never used it. I used Bialcamid for facial reconstruction, and we were using large amounts. We were using 18, 20 cc's in the face, and we had two different complications. One was what it was definitely a septic abscess after a dental extraction, after there were heat in the face, after things like that. But also what worried me a lot is many of them will have an itch at night, and in the morning they were like blown up like a balloon with no trauma, nothing out of the blue. And those we will extract and it came out like chicken fat. It was kind of like yellow, but no odor or nothing, and they were aseptic. They were non-septic. So they seem to be, I didn't do any further research or anything like that, but it seemed to me like sometimes was the reaction, the host reaction to the chemical, to the product. Because we send the samples to the lab, they couldn't find any bacteria, anything, but they still have that. Of course, we're not talking about 2 or 3 cc's, we're talking about 20 or something like that, right? And not Aquamid, but the other one, the cousin Bialcamid. Mm-hmm.
So the company that makes Aquamid Contura sort of points out all the differences between the Bialcamid and Aquamid in the concentration of the polyacrylamide, in the pH, the lengths of the chains. And with Aquamid, it has this, what they describe as a free water exchange. So the gel is 97% water, but that water exchanges backwards and forwards between water in the body. And the theory is that sort of gives it its safety, that it is interacting with the body, and body tissue water gets into the actual product. And so that's sort of the idea of as to why it's safe. But all the companies always, you know, they're there to sell you the product. They're there to tell you why it's great, why it's better than everything else. None of them ever come and tell you this product's terrible. It's just going to ruin people's lives. This is going to become the worst thing that you ever do. It'll be a rod for your back. So yeah, everything a company tells you, you just have to take with a grain of salt. So I think if we're going to do this, it should only proceed as part of a study that we're going to publish, and that we need to follow these guys up for years and years and years. You know, maybe we're going to have to follow them up for decades to really know that it's safe. And you know, maybe it's a bit like COVID vaccinations. You know, you do a vaccination, you think, hey, look, we're all safe, and then we find, 6 months later, the vaccine's not working anymore. We've got to have another vaccine. I know, okay, yeah. That's fine, so long as they don't sort of find that, you know, everybody who gets 3 vaccines, you know, grows an extra arm. In fact, I wouldn't mind having an extra arm. That would be handy. But
I wouldn't mind it. It will come handy.
Yeah. Well, so long as one of your arms doesn't drop off or something. And again, it's the same if we're using this sort of thing. We've got to be considering it. And you know, there may be no reason for it, but we don't know until we know.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, good luck. As I told you, I don't have any experience with Aquamid. I was dealing with the complications of Bialcamid when they invited me to a workshop on Aquamid, and I just looked from the distance and I was like, Yeah. So yeah, but it's the extent of my experience with the product.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep you informed as to how we go and you know what happens, and we'll see if it is part of the future of this process. Look, is there anything else that you'd like to tell the listeners about the wonderful things that you do with penises?
Well, you know, I'm very happy to. I'm about to announce that I'm retiring because it's 30-some. Yep. Yeah, it's 30 some years of these and 17 years of bioplasty. I'm going to be remotely controlling my office, and Dr. Morales, who is a very skilled physician. You probably know about her too.
Oh, yes.
She's going to be in charge of this. And I'll be traveling between San Diego and a beautiful tropical paradise that we have in Mexico that is called Puerto Vallarta in the west coast of Mexico. It has the biggest bay. It's almost a gulf, but still considered a bay. And I'm going to be sitting right in front of it, watching the most amazing sunsets in the world. But still very interested on this topic, and I want to remain pretty active, if not hands-on, at least this way, the way we're doing it today, or similar ways. And I'm very happy. I mean, my career got a lot of spice with this with the phalloplasty. It was definitely another thing, because I went through. I started dermatology when we used just the magnifying lens, and all of a sudden fillers and lasers and Botox and all that came. It was a big turn, and then the fillers turned their own. Made their own way into this. So yeah, I will be very happy to continue participating in this world, but I certainly want to take it easy for the time coming.
Okay, so very important news there. So for everybody, what you'll find that some of my colleagues have found, nothing makes your practice busier than retiring. So everybody, if you want the man who really developed phalloplasty and the use of permanent fillers and PMMA, you've got to get to Tijuana like straight away and get Dr. C to be able to do your procedure. I know Dr. Morales has done hundreds and hundreds of cases, and we'll have to get her on to the podcast and have a chat with her as well. But I imagine that as soon as people hear this news, flights to San Diego are going to be booked out. People are going to be booking hotel rooms. What's the name of the hotel that's above your practice? That place is going to be...
right.
Yeah, it's going to be hot. You won't have a moment to rest from today until the day that you say, I've got to get out of here. It's just too busy.
Right.
I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful retirement. It sounds like a fantastic place. I hope that one day I can get over there. As I said, my parents took me to San Diego, and we did go into Tijuana, but we didn't, I was only a kid. We didn't really have a great chance to look around. I'd love to be able to get to Mexico. In fact, I've never been really into Central or South America at all. So hopefully my future will lead me in that direction soon.
You will be always welcome. I have a nice place there, and this place sits right at the end of the Rocky, the Rocky Mountains turn into the Sierra Madre in Mexico, and they go and right there in Puerto Vallarta. So we have the big mountains, the palm trees, the weather that is fabulous, hot and humid, and lush green and everything. So it's a beautiful place to spend a little bit of time.
I would love to be able to get across there. As soon as I get off this recording, I'm going to go to Google Earth and look it up and have a look there. It sounds fabulous. You certainly deserve to be able to go and take some time and relax and sit on the beach. Maybe you've got a boat that you can go out on. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you. We'll make sure that we have some notes, links to Avanti Derma, so that people know where to find you. We'll get this posted onto Fallow boards, because this is going to be, I guess you must be happy for us to be releasing this information, because now that you put it here, everybody's going to know. The phones will be running hot next week with people, because if this is their last chance to see you, they're going to be getting in. Look, thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure, and I do hope that one day we get to meet in person.
It's been a pleasure, Jason. Thank you so much, and good luck. You have a wonderful practice. I've been following you too, and it's been definitely a revolution, especially with the indication of HA and with the added challenge that you guys have in Australia, because the patients are not circumcised. So I really admire a good job when the patient is uncircumcised.
That's
and it's your population.
Yeah, that's been a look, wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking again.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day.